Today's video is brought to you by Card Kingdom, and you can pre-order all the Double Masters cards you need now over at cardkingdom.com. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Double Master spoilers, and we got a lot to talk about today. I know we are nearing the end-ish of Double Master spoiler season, but we still got a ton of new cards, some really good mythics, some interesting rares, which means we should probably jump right into it, start talking about sweet new Double Masters cards. So let's start with the good news today. We got another really sweet, really valuable mythic, an Avaycn Angel of Hope, along with a sweet box topper with pretty sweet, very angelic art. So Avaycn, the big 8-mana, makes everything indestructible, indestructible itself angel, is a really popular commander card. That's the only format where it really sees play. But as far as mono white commanders, I believe Avacyn's like 6th on the list, which means it's pretty popular as a commander. It's also relatively popular in the 99 in a couple of different styles of decks. First, if you're playing an angel themed deck, Avaycn is one of the best angels you can have in your deck. So Lyras and Kalia, stuff like that. But Avaycn also shows up in big creature decks like Mael of the Anima, or even legendary themed decks. Captain Sisay can tutor it up. So Avaycn kind of sees play across the format of Commander, and it's pretty valuable. It was, I think, $50 some. Right now, the reprint version is around $40. I expect that the box topper will be really expensive for Commander players as well, because Commander players, they love their unique prints. So definitely another really solid top tier mythic in Double Masters. Not going to be disappointed at all to open this one. We also got Stoneforge Mystic along with a super sweet box topper. Stoneforge box topper, to me that looks like sort of Fire and Ice. We've seen those swords in various card arts before. So Stoneforge was banned in Modern, now unbanned in Modern, and a Modern staple along with being a Legacy staple, along with seeing play in Commander decks. Mostly shows up in dedicated Stoneforge shells, being able to tutor out equipment like, for example, Batterskull, also coming in Double Masters, this time at Mythic, also with an interesting box topper. I'm actually not sure what's going on in that box topper. It kind of just looks like a pile of rocks to me, but it's full art, it's borderless, so I guess it's sweet, even though the art kind of confuses me. So this allows you to potentially live the dream, if you get really lucky and limited, of Stoneforge into Batterskull. And these cards in Legacy, in Modern, basically competitive formats, almost always show up together. These are the two cards that kind of form a combo. Most often your Stoneforge is getting a Batterskull, then maybe you get a sword or a Jade or something after that. But these cards always show up together. Great reprints coming in pairs. Also, still pretty valuable. Not like insanely expensive, but Batterskull's $18. Stoneforge is also in that price range. So value-wise, good reprints, along with being very playable reprints. Stoneforge in specific also sees a big chunk of Commander play. Essentially, any equipment-based deck is going to want Stoneforge because it finds your best equipment for any situation. Even better in mono white decks, where Stoneforge is like pseudo card advantage. You can grab things like Skull Clamp if you need to draw cards. So Stoneforge, definitely a Commander staple as well. Batterskull, on the other hand, doesn't really show up in Commander, like very, very fringe, but unlike Legacy or Modern, where a 4/4 Vigilance Lifelinker coming down on turn 3 and potentially coming back into play a bunch of times by bouncing it to your hand when it dies is very strong. In Commander, a 4/4 lifelink Vigilance on turn 3 is kind of like, meh, whatever. I got 40 life. There's a whole bunch of people. Like, it's probably going to get blown up by something. So not as exciting in Commander. But Stoneforge, Commander, and Constructed staple. Batterskull, staple of Modern and Legacy, definitely solid reprints, and hopefully just get them both in a draft, because that would be really hilarious to pull it off in Limited. We also got at Mythic Darksteel Forge, which might not look exciting. It was reprinted in a core set not that long ago, but it's all the way back up near $20, maybe a little bit over $20. So the price has increased rapidly. Just 9 mana makes all your artifacts indestructible. This is purely a Commander card, but it shows up in a lot of artifact-based Commander decks where it gives your artifacts very strong protection, and because Darksteel Forge is an artifact itself, it does protect itself. Yes, it can still get exiled or whatever, but it does shut down a lot of the common disruption that people play to blow up your artifacts. So like Karn plays it, Muzio, Duretti, basically any deck that's going to have a lot of artifacts on the battlefield. Darksteel Forge is in the conversation for being in that deck, which is why it's still an expensive card, even though it was reprinted in a core set not that long ago. So another solid reprint, not as exciting as like Avaycn, but still, you're not going to complain if you crack a Darksteel Forge in Double Masters. And this is one of those cards that, as we saw when it was reprinted in a core set, it's not going to stay cheap. Like, there's enough commander demand that, yes, it got reprinted, the price is going to come down, you can get your copies on the cheap, but it's going to bounce right back up. So keeping the price in check by reprinting it is a good move by Wizards. Next up, we have the return of AdNauseam, a modern legacy and CEDH table, which is also really expensive because it's never been reprinted, like $25-ish. So definitely a high value rare, one of the highest value rares in the set so far. So AdNauseam mostly sees play, well, actually in a few different places. In Modern, mostly combos off with Phyrexian Unlife, Angel's Grace to let you draw your entire deck, and then you win with like Thawsis Oracle or something. Then in Legacy, it's part of the AdNauseam Tendrils of Agony deck, where again, you draw a bunch of cards with AdNauseam. In Legacy, you got all Lotus Petals and other free mana sources, Dark Rituals. So you draw a ton of cards, cast all your free mana, Tendrils your opponent for lethal, and maybe the newest source of demand for AdNauseam is CEDH deck. So AdNauseam is a card that doesn't really see play in casual commander decks, because casual commander decks tend to have a pretty high curve, so you're going to AdNauseam yourself to death really quickly. CEDH, on the other hand, is in a lot of ways like a singleton version of a legacy deck, or even a vintage deck, where you have all these free mana sources, your curve is really low to the ground, so usually AdNauseam is not full-on I win the game in a CEDH deck, but it's usually draw 7, draw 10, draw 20, depending on the scenario, and in Commander you got 40 life to work with, so you have a lot of life to spend on AdNauseam. So Kess, Najila, Zur, tons of different CEDH decks play it, which means all around AdNauseam is a great reprint. It's good for Modern and Legacy, good for Commander, it's got good value, absolutely nothing to complain about with this one. We also got the return of Thawsis. Thawsis. There is a normal pack version. The actual like art isn't up yet, but Thawsis coming not only as a rare in the set, but as a box topper, still really expensive because it is one of the most played cards in Modern, in Pioneer, and in Legacy. And I'm talking about top 10 most played cards overall. I think it's like top 5-ish in Modern, number 1 overall in Pioneer, and top 10-ish in Legacy. So this is just an ultra staple of constructed formats. Pretty expensive for a rare to boot, $25, $30, somewhere in that range. And I expect that this box topper will be really expensive based on the Amonkhet Invocation Thawsis. So Thawsis is one of the single most expensive of the Amonkhet invocations. I don't see any reason to believe that Thawsis as a box topper will be any different, other than the fact it's a rare rather than a mythic, but this is certainly one of the box toppers, especially the rare box toppers, that you want to open most when you crack your box of Double Masters or your VIP back, because the value is definitely there. We also got a reprint that people have been asking for, especially Pauper players, like the professor over at Tulare Community College, for a very long time. Obliette. So Obliette, it's essentially like a weird black banishing light, comes into play. You now phase out a creature. The wording's been updated a little bit. It phases out the creature. Then when Obliette leaves play, the creature comes back into play with all the auras and equipments and everything on it. So this new wording actually is much, much cleaner. If you look at the old wording, oh my goodness, it like makes my brain hurt, the original Obliette. Select a creature in play when Obliette is cast. That creature is considered out of play as long as Obliette is in play. Hence, you don't get hence very much anymore on Magic cards. Hence, that creature cannot be the target of spells and cannot receive damage, use special powers, attack, or defend. All counters and enchantments on that creature remain, but are out of play. If Obliette is removed, the creature returns to play tap. So the new wording, definitely a little bit different, but much, much cleaner, much, much simpler. And Obliette is a card that is relevant for 2 reasons. One is, it's really expensive, especially for a card that I believe was originally a common. It's like $30+. That's mostly because it's ridiculously old. It's from those original sets of Magic that are so expensive. It's also relevant for Pauper play, where it's a part of the mono black control deck, and this is the main reason people have wanted a reprint. It gets the cost of the mono black control deck with Grey Merchants, Kubaj Witches, Phyrexian Rangers, gets them down a lot. If you look at typical mono black control Pauper deck, you'll see that the entire deck is $92. However, 64 of those dollars are 2 copies of Obliette, and Obliette occasionally is played more than a 2 of, like even a 4 of at some points in the deck's history. So basically 75% almost of the cost of building mono black control and Pauper is getting your Obliettes. Now the deck is going to be much cheaper. You're looking at the total cost of this deck going from $90 down to like $30, which is super cheap even for a Pauper deck. So definitely a great reprint financially. Just keep in mind the price on this is going to tank. I know right now if you look at the price spreadsheet that we'll talk about at the end of the video, it's listed as $30. It's definitely going to go down to like $10, I would guess, on pre-orders. And after the set is open, I expect this to be close to a bulk common because it doesn't see play outside of Pauper, and while Pauper is a format that does have a bit of demand in the paper world, it's not a big format in paper, so I would expect this to go from $30 down to very close to free based on this reprinting, because it doesn't see play in Commander, doesn't see play in Legacy, isn't legal in Modern or Pioneer, so good reprint value-wise, but expect the value to come down a lot, which is exactly what you want, like we were talking about, to make Mono Black Control and Pauper cheaper. We also got the rest of the reflections. We figured they were probably coming. Rage Reflection, pretty bulkish. Wound Reflection, technically $25, but as we've talked about with all of the reflections, price is driven by the fact that these cards have never been reprinted, so it's more scarcity than demand. Wound Reflection sees some fridge play in certain Commander decks, is like a combo piece to drain people out of the game, doubling up the damage essentially, but really, these are cards that are going to be much cheaper because there's not a whole lot of demand for them. We also got Bloodspore Tharnix, which just kind of like a $3 rare, originally from a Commander set. It is a good way to pump your creatures, though. If you're playing some sort of go-wide, tokeny, Gave, or Slimefoot, or Rift-type Commander deck, where you have a bunch of things to devour and can make a bunch of tokens every turn, Bloodsport Tharnix is actually a really nice payoff for a deck like that. But those are pretty fridge decks, definitely more of an archetype staple for specific commanders than a true staple of the Commander format. We also got Vexing Shusher, which is oddly another top-tier rare, mostly because it's managed to dodge master sets, dodge reprintings, so it's more expensive-ish. Right now, like $10, a little bit more than that before it was reprinted, because it is not very common and relatively hard to find, rather than being in high demand, but it does see play in Commander deck. If you're playing like a Gruul or Jund deck, especially one that is concerned about resolving a key spell, like you're playing Prosh, and you really need your Prosh to resolve, or you're playing Wart, and you really need your Wart to resolve, Vexing Shusher, pretty good option, not only being uncounterable itself, but making any spell uncounterable for a single mana, which is actually a pretty powerful ability. Yes, it's fragile, it does die to removal, but still, if you're playing a deck that really needs to resolve something, Vexing Shusher is a way to get the job done. So this is, I think, a solid reprint, although I expect the price to come down quite a bit, because as I said, the price of Vexing Shusher, more about not being reprinted in a very long time and having relatively few copies on the market, rather than high demand, although also, as we mentioned, it does have some demand. So a solid, if unspectacular reprint at Rare and Double Masters. We also got Oblivion Stone. So Oblivion Stone, a Wrath primarily for Tron decks, although it does show up in Commander decks, especially if you're a color that doesn't have good Wrath, because it can blow up everything. So Oblivion Stone used to be absurdly expensive. It's been reprinted a few times. Right now it's only like $4. The most interesting part of Oblivion Stone for me is, with Oblivion Stone added to the mix, we have gotten almost an entire Tron deck printed in Double Masters. So if you look through just the typical modern Tron deck, that is a huge chunk of the deck being reprinted recently, like Karn, Ugin, Wormcoil, Ballista, all the lands, Expedition Map. We recently got Ugin as well in the core set, so most of the expensive cards from Tron have just gotten reprinted. We're missing, what, a couple of the newer Eldrazi, like Ulamog and Emrakul, Karn the Great Creator, which isn't too expensive still, because it was a rare in War of the Spark. So really, if you want to put together a modern deck, a top-tier modern deck that has been top-tier in Modern for a long time, on the cheap, I think think that Tron might be the way to go now. As much as I hate to recommend players buying into Tron, because I hate losing to Tron, it is a really good, really legit deck, and almost all of the key pieces of the deck, even going to some sideboard cards, Ensnaring Bridges, Trinispheres, Thragtusk, also showing up in Double Masters, have been reprinted in this set. So this is your chance to get a top-tier modern deck at a really big discount. So I think that's the most interesting part. Another piece of Tron getting cheaper, allowing players to almost get an entire deck at a discount, which is a really good thing. Hopefully it'll get more players into the modern format. So we've talked about the good news of the day. Expensive mythics like Avaycn, Tron in modern, basically the entire deck getting reprinted, Stoneforge, Batterskull, more really good reprints. So we've talked about the good. We've given praise for Wizards' good decisions, good reprints. Now it's time to talk a little bit about the bad. And bad number one is Geth, Lord of the Vault. And I should preface this by saying, I actually really like Geth. Geth is a really fun card, being able to reanimate your opponent's stuff. It's spicy. It does see a bit of commander play, mostly in the 99, but it can be your commander as well. So this is not a criticism of Geth, Lord of the Vault as a Magic card, because I think it's a fun card to play in commander, and I like how it plays. So that's the good news. The bad news is it's at Mythic in Double Masters, and Geth is literally $1. I actually did some research. I looked back at Tree of Redemption back when it was reprinted in Masters 25, and everyone rightly freaked out because it was such a horrible reprint. Geth, Lord of the Vault, actually less valuable than Tree of the Redemption. So while you get more playability out of Geth, you might actually put it in a commander deck when that would be pretty rare of Tree of Redemption. Value-wise, it's literally like $1. So this is taking bad mythics to a whole nother level. We had been talking about bad mythics as like Geist of St. Traff, which were like $5, maybe $7 before it got reprinted. Geth, Lord of the Vault is a whole new level of bad, and it's really disappointing. When you're going to sell packs for $15, and when you're going to sell VIP boosters for $100, you really just can't put $1 cards at Mythic. Like, Geth has been a commander deck card. It's been reprinted a bunch of times. It is just not the type of card that you need to open in a $15 booster pack at Mythic Rare. If it was a rare, whatever. I'm assuming Wizards didn't want to dump it down to rare because it is a really powerful rare in an artifact theme set. Being able to mill your opponent out of the game, steal their stuff, it can swing games of limited, but just leave it out. Put something more valuable in there. I think this is kind of just a little bit of a slap in the face to people opening boxes. I feel like if you're gonna get lucky enough to open a Mythic in your Double Masters booster pack, you should at least win. Like, the worst feeling, I think, cracking packs, and I love cracking packs, the worst feeling is winning by getting a Mythic and realizing that that Mythic is still a big loss and less valuable than many of the rares, even some of the commons and uncommons in the set. So you get excited when you see the Mythic symbol on there, and then you're like, oh my god, this is the literal worst card ever. So I feel like this was a big miss. Yes, it is true that some commander decks, Sir Conrad, Rexiel, Lazav, actually play Geth, Lord of the Vault. That's a nice thing, but if you need one to play in Sir Conrad, Rexiel, or Lazav, you can pick it up for $1. You don't need to crack a $15 booster pack for it. So Wizards, while they've given us some great reprints today, and in all honesty, the Mythic Rare slot has been very solid, and most of them have been very good. It's not like some of the Master sets, where you get like Tarmogoyf, Bob, Liliana, a few top end, and then a bunch of jank. But Geth, Lord of the Vault, it is a pure miss. There's no other way around it other than saying you should be putting $1 Mythic Rares in the Mythic Rare slot of your $15/$100 booster packs. Speaking of things I want to complain about a little bit, we also got Ravenous Trap. So Ravenous Trap, it is a good card. It has at various points, especially during the Hogak era, seen play in Modern, seen play in Legacy as a graveyard hate spell. It can be free as long as 3 cards go into your opponent's graveyard, instant speed, so it is a powerful card. The problem is, Ravenous Trap, it's uncommon, and for some reason that blows my mind, it has been upgraded from uncommon to rare. So it was a common in a $4 pack set. Also a $4 pack set that had fetch lands, legal and standard, but that's a whole nother topic. I'll let Vince cover that one. But it was a uncommon in a $4 pack set. Now, in a $15 a pack set and a $100 VIP set, it's upgraded to rare, and I really cannot see any reason for this. Normally when this happens, the justification, kind of like we were talking about with Geth, even though Geth wasn't upgraded, but the justification of Geth at Mythic is, it's really strong and limited. You can't even say that about Ravenous Trap. Ravenous Trap, you're essentially never going to have this in your main deck in limited. Maybe you put it in your sideboard and sideboarded in. So I could not see even the slightest justification. A few people said, oh, when they were designing this set, it was back during the Hogak era, Ravenous Trap was like $7. But being a $7 uncommon doesn't mean you get upgraded to rare. Path to Exile has been $7 or more many times. Always reprinted uncommon. Basalt Monolith in Double Masters itself is a more than $7 uncommon. It wasn't upgraded to rare. People would freak out if it was upgraded to rare. So I don't know what Wizards is thinking with this one. I have literally zero idea why Ravenous Trap would be upgraded to uncommon. It really blows my mind. This one, it's almost funny how ridiculous of an idea it is to upgrade this not good in limited, not really played right now in constructed, not really that valuable. It's like 50 cents right now. Why, Wizards? Why in the world did you upgrade this to rare? So people are freaking out a little bit about this, and I really can't blame them. This one is a pretty mind-boggling misstep. At least with Geth, you can argue it's good and limited, and someone's going to get joy out of cracking it and playing it in their draft deck and wrecking their opponent by milling him out of the game. You can't even argue that with Ravenous Trap. So that is bad news number 2. Geth and then Ravenous Trap. Otherwise today, Mazavith coming back, a good land, another good reprint, $15-ish. He's playing commander decks. Although, if you play it in your commander deck, be careful about counting it as a land, because it doesn't actually tap for mana. It taps to remove an attacking creature from combat, essentially. He's playing in some legacy decks as well, especially Life from the Loam, land-style decks. We also got a couple of cards that used to be Mythic at rare. Savageboard Hydra, it had been printed at rare in one other master set, so not totally new. Progenitor Mimic, first time showing up at rare, I believe, and Progenitor Mimic, actually a pretty sweet commander card. If you're playing a clone deck, it's really powerful, not only cloning something, but giving you a copy each turn. Adds a lot of value eventually. We also got the return of Hannah Ship's Navigator, which is still worth a few dollars. Way to return artifacts or enchantments from your graveyard to your hand. Shows up in a bunch of different artifact or enchantment-themed commander decks. Stuff like Sidri, Eteri, Alea, anything that has a bunch of artifacts and enchantments, especially decks that are putting them in and out of the graveyard, but even just as protection from removal, your opponent blowing up your best artifact, then Hannah being able to get it back makes it pretty good. Not an expensive rare, but it is worth like $4 or something, so not a complete whiff if you happen to open it. We also got, lower rarity-wise, the return of Veteran Explorer, which is one of my favorite cards. Veteran Explorer is seen play mostly, almost exclusively, in a deck called Nick Fit in Legacy, but as a way to ramp, because most Legacy decks, if you look at Legacy decks, they mostly play very few basic lands and a ton of dual lands. Nick Fit looks to exploit this by playing a bunch of basic lands, then you just play Veteran Explorer, you sack it to like Cabal Therapy or something, Phyrexian Tower, you get 2 lands, and that allows you to ramp into stuff that you would not think of as Legacy playable. Like, Nick Fit finishers are usually like Thragtusk, Grave Titans, just random like 4, 5, 6 mana green-black style creatures they would associate more with Commander or with like Standard when they were legal. So I really love the idea of Nick Fit. It's one of my favorite Legacy decks to play. Having more Veteran Explorers, even though it's not super expensive, it's still $1 or $2. The art on it's cool, so all around, can't complain about more Veteran Explorers. Otherwise, we get some bulk rares. Dualcaster Mage just showed up in Jumpstart. Unfortunately, not legal in many formats. Does see a bit of Commander play. Ratchet Bomb, legitimate sideboard card in formats like Historic and Pioneer, Modern even on occasion, but it's pretty cheap because it's been reprinted a lot. Inkwell Leviathan has been reprinted a million times, but it is a good reanimation target, although Inkwell makes me sad. There was a day when Inkwell was like an actual legitimate reanimation target, but now, if you're going to cheat things into play, we have Grizzlebrands, we have Ionas, we have Emeralds if you can get around the shuffle in your graveyard. So Inkwell went from being a card that you would legitimately see in Legacy decks to reanimate because it kills in like 3 attacks with trample, Island Walk's good, you can't kill it, to a card that, I don't know, maybe you get it in your cube as like a second tier target. So it makes me a little sad that it's been so overwhelmed by different targets, but still, it's a sweet card if you want to try to reanimate it, and it's super cheap. Finally today, checking in on prices. Overall, values are dropping. Average Mythic down to 28. It was closer to 30 yesterday. Median down to 18. So this is a huge drop since the beginning of spoiler season. At the beginning of spoiler season, we're at like $49 average. But again, a big reason for this is cards that people want, cards that people need, getting cheaper rather than the fact that Wizards has given us a bunch of bad cards. I mean, they did give us a Geth, which is disappointing, but we also got Avaycn today. We got Batterskull today, which are decent cards. So it's more about prices coming down than Wizards messing up for the most part. Although, as I said, like there has been some mess ups along the way too. As far as rares, 452 average, 240 median, kind of showing the variance there. There's much more variance in rares than there is in Mythics, honestly. Mythics, yes, there are a couple of duds, but really most of the Mythics are decent. And you can tell because the median value is closer to the average value, where with rares, the median value is almost half of the average value, which means, we're going to have some high variance opens. Yes, there's great opens. $20 rares. Getting 2 of those into your pack is insane. We even have some new ones added to the list recently. Hammer, Walking Ballista. Yesterday, Mana Reflection, Blood Moon, Goblin Guide, Stoneforge today, along with Maze of Ith, along with Wound Reflection, AdNauseam, Thawsis. But all of those really good opens are kind of outweighed by the bad rares, and there are many bulk rares in the set, and also prices dropping. So cards that were $10, like Moon Reflection, down to $3. Cards that were $10, like Engineer Explosives, down to $5. So we're seeing these prices drop across the board, which is a good thing. So overall, values are down, but the good news is value's still looking pretty good. With the estimated value coming in at around $15, which is a reasonably decent value, especially since we're not counting box toppers, we're not counting foils yet. Although, be warned, Obliette is jacking up the price a little bit, and Obliette is not going to be $32. It's going to be a bulk card once all is said and done. But anyway, that's been our daily Double Master spoilers for today. So what do you think about all these new cards? Are you more hyped from yesterday, considering we got Archangel Avaycn, we got Batterskull and Stoneforge, AdNauseam, Thawsis, all these high-end cards. Are you less hyped because we got Geth as a $1 Mythic? We got Ravenous Trap upgraded to rare. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching. I hope you all enjoy it, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.